Hello, I'm Laura Cellier and you're watching Inside the Americas. Coming up in the programme, Chris Christie battles to save his political skin and his widely expected bid for the White House as he becomes embroiled in a host of scandals. Plus, looking for answers, the family of a French couple who went missing 3 years ago in Bolivia are to meet those accused of their murder. And the former insurgent now hoping for peace in his country. We meet an ex-member of Colombia's FARC rebels as talks resume in Cuba. First, he had been seen as a serious contender for the White House in 2016, but now New Jersey's larger-than-life governor Chris Christie is embroiled in a host of scandals. Among them, revelations his team deliberately orchestrated traffic mayhem to discredit a rival. Well, now Christie is battling to save his reputation. Clovis Casali has the story.
October 2012, Hurricane Sandy swept through several states, and New Jersey in particular. In the aftermath of the devastation, Republican Governor Chris Christie launched a major advertising campaign. It's aimed at improving New Jersey's image to attract visitors, and the Christie family took on a leading role.
The Jersey Shore is open.
The word is spreading.
Because we're stronger than the storm.
But these attempts for what Christie labelled a Jersey comeback could in fact lead to the governor's downfall. An internet petition is calling for his resignation, and several politicians demand an inquiry into this advertising operation.
The Christie administration took the firm that was the high bidder that was charging twice as much, in this case $4.7 million instead of the 2.5. And, that was the firm that said that they were going to put him and his family on, to do the ad campaign with him and his family, and the other wasn't.
The charismatic Republican finds himself embroiled in yet another scandal, the second in 2014. It's been a tough start to the year for the man seen as a strong contender to run for president in 2016. In his State of the State address, he apologized for the mistakes made.
We let down the people we're entrusted to serve. I know our citizens deserve better, much better. Now, I'm the governor, and I'm ultimately responsible for all that happens on my watch, both good and bad. Now, without a doubt, we will cooperate with all appropriate inquiries.
The other scandal is of a very different nature. In mid-September, authorities closed part of the highway leading to the George Washington Bridge, causing huge traffic jams, as seen on this amateur footage. Emails from Christie's aides appear to show that it was a calculated move, a way for the New Jersey governor's entourage to infuriate a political rival, the Democratic Mayor Fort Lee. But did Chris Christie know about it? He's denied any wrongdoing.
What matters in the end is whether he's telling the truth. If he isn't, I believe it won't hold up over time, and his presidential aspirations will collapse. If it's true, it's still a big problem for him.
The top aide involved in the so-called Bridgegate was fired, and Chris Christie said he felt humiliated by the scandal. Surprisingly, polls show that for the time being, his popularity hasn't suffered much from the two scandals.
To Mexico, and it was a case of locals taking the law into their own hands and trying to chase members of the powerful drug cartels out of their towns and cities. But now the government has decided enough is enough, and troops have been sent in to disarm the militias. The fighters have been asked to hand over their weapons and go home, but not everyone is cooperating. Thomas Waterhouse has the story.
A burning truck on a highway in Michoacán, the latest victim of a weekend of gang warfare that has plagued this troubled western Mexican state. But now enough is enough for the government. After emergency security talks in the state capital Morelia on Monday, the country's interior minister signed a new pact with the regional governor, agreeing to work hand in hand to bring an end to the unrest.
From today, we will implement a broad strategy in the towns most affected to ensure the security of the people and their property, and also to combat the social conditions that generate violent incidents.
Federal troops will now patrol the Tierra Caliente area of the state, the heartland of the infamous Knights Templar drug cartel. For over a year now, groups of armed vigilantes have been fighting the Templar, but in the last few days their combat has been particularly bloody. On Sunday, a group of them seized the town of Nueva Italia following a firefight with cartel members who have now retreated to the mountains. And now the vigilantes claim to have surrounded the group's headquarters in the city of Apatzingán, which was reportedly a ghost town on Monday. Despite some of these civilian militias heeding the government's plea to drop their weapons, the turmoil in this region is still the biggest security crisis of Peña Nieto's 13-month administration, with the murder rate nearly doubling here since 2006.
Now, in 2010, Jérémy Bélanger and Fanny Blanchot left France to discover South America. Their plan was to travel for a year, but the two never came home. Well, 3.5 years after they disappeared, 4 Bolivians are going on trial accused of involvement in their murders. Jérémy and Fanny's families want justice, but above all, they want answers.
It's been over 3 years since Cécile and Patrick's son Jérémy and his girlfriend Fanny disappeared, presumed murdered in Bolivia. Through their grief, they've never given up the fight for justice.
We went back to work and everything, but our lives have been in limbo since 2010. It's the only thing we think of.
The young couple vanished in August 2010 during a year-long trip in South America. The last their families heard, they were staying at this isolated farm in Bolivia's Amazon basin. No bodies were ever found. The police were ready to drop the case. Jérémy's family kept investigating. The trial could finally bring them the answers they're seeking.
We hope that the defendants, who for the moment deny the accusations, will finally at least tell us what exactly happened that day, their reasons for doing it, and of course, what they did with the bodies.
The prime suspect is the owner of the farm. Prosecutors say he attempted to rape Fanny before killing her and Jérémy. Fanny's parents are also attending the trial. They're concerned about the extremely tense atmosphere in the small town of Santa Ana.
We know that there is enormous pressure on the prosecutor. There have been death threats from certain members of the defendants' families.
The trial will take place under high security. It's expected to last 2 months.
Cuba hosted another round of talks between Colombian rebels and their government this week. Negotiators from the FARC insurgency had an offer to make. They want the UN to regulate the farming of illegal crops like coca leaf and opium poppies. It's just one proposal in a process that Colombians hope will bring an end to the world's longest running insurgency. Well, now we meet Regis Ortez, a former guerrilla who's been trying to build a new life.
Football and music, the innocent pastimes of the kids of Barranquilla. But some will grow up too fast. Over the last 15 years, around 2,500 children in Colombia have been recruited by FARC, either of their own free will or by force. Regis is a former rebel now involved in a project to help children resist the call of FARC. In his younger days, he was a left-wing student leader, uninterested in armed combat. It was only after receiving death threats from right-wing paramilitaries that he joined FARC at the age of 30. But 2 years later, a 12-year-old recruit was killed during an airstrike on his camp, a painful experience that made Regis turn away from violence.
The child died in my arms. That's the part of the experience that has had a huge impact on me.
Now the former rebel works for the Colombian Agency for Reintegration.
I think that initiatives like this should be available in many parts of the country where children don't have other alternatives.
But his real hope is that the project will soon have no reason to exist. In late 2012, FARC and the Colombian government started peace talks in an attempt to finally put an end to the almost 50-year-old conflict.
Guerrilla fighters want to go home too. And you could feel it when they were talking about the moment an agreement would be signed.
This month, negotiators have started tackling the difficult issue of the drug trade. FARC wants to see regulation of the production and sale of cocoa leaf, opium poppy and cannabis crops, while Conservative President Juan Manuel Santos wants to eradicate them. But both sides have managed to come to agreement on some issues like rural development and FARC's future participation in politics. It's expected to be a long process, but Regis, for one, is optimistic for his country's future.
And we'll leave you this week with some impressive images from the once great city of Detroit. Tens of thousands of people have abandoned the bankrupt town in recent years. And that means perfect conditions for a sport known as urban skiing. Well, these adrenaline junkies, Carl Fosvet, Kai Capella and Max Morello, have been using the city's abandoned buildings to show off their hell-raising skills. Looks pretty daring, but I don't think the resorts in Vermont have anything to worry about just yet. Well, that's it for Inside the Americas. Stay tuned to Pulse Makeup.